police car pulls up in front, and a cop comes to the front door, knocks, and says he's looking for me. So they, right there, they took me out the door. They put my hands against the car. It was a real cop car. It was a real policeman, and there were real neighbors in the street who didn't know that I was. This was an experiment, and there was cameras all around and neighbors all around. They put me in the car. Then they drove me around Palo Alto. They took me to the police station, the basement of the police station. Then they put me in a cell. I was the first one to be picked up, so they put me in a cell, which is just like a room with a door with bars on it. You could tell it wasn't a real jail. They locked me in there in this degrading little outfit. They were taking this experiment too seriously.
Well, indeed we were. This is what the prisoners looked like. Again, we wanted to de-individuate them. We took away their names. They gave them numbers. Instead of shaving their heads, we had them wear a women's nylon stocking cap. We wanted to make them less masculine, so we put them in dresses without underpants. On each leg there was a chain with a lock, so that even when they were sleeping and rolled over, it hit their other foot, they'd wake up, realize that they had lost their freedom. The guards had symbols of power, military uniforms, billy clubs, whistles, handcuffs, and they wore silver reflecting sunglasses, an idea I got from the movie Cool Hand Luke, which if you haven't seen it, you should see. It's a great movie. And it began just like the opening picture in AbuGhraib, doing push-ups. It's always doing push-ups, jumping jacks, menial physical thing, moving boxes back and forth. But then guards get bored. Boredom is a major motivator of evil. Because once you get bored, you want to do something new, something different, something creative. And so over time, they started doing more and more extreme things, certainly more things that are humiliating, until the experiment got out of control.
In 1971, Phil Zimbardo conducted a revolutionary experiment here in the bowels of Stanford University in the United States. It rocked the world of psychology. A group of students were divided randomly into prisoners and guards and lived in a makeshift jail. The prisoners immediately became submissive, and the guards became cruel.
Not only not getting a cigarette, but for as long as the cell's blockaded, you're...
Within a week, Phil Zimbardo's prison was inhumane, and the experiment had to be cut short. At one stage, prisoner 416 went on hunger strike in protest.
Get in that closet then.
So the guards put him in solitary confinement. Amazingly, his fellow prisoners turned on him too. They were given a chance to release him.
Now what will it be? What will it be over here? 416, you're going to be in there for a while. So just get used to it.
He is totally rejected, not only by the guards, but by his other group of prisoners. And it had a very powerful, profound effect on him. So the humiliating task was guards had prisoners clean out toilet bowls with their bare hands, took their blankets and dumped them in dirt or in nettles, had to spend hours pulling these out. And then they started the sexually degrading activities, stripping them prisoners naked all the time, putting bags over their heads. The kid you saw, the first kid to get arrested, had a nervous breakdown in 36 hours, the first to be released. Normal, healthy kid. He was the ringleader of a rebellion on the second day, and the guards started hassling him, singling him out for abuse, and he couldn't handle it. He had a breakdown. And that became a model of how you get out of that prison, because in their minds it became a prison run by psychologists, not by the state. Before he broke down, he told them, you cannot leave. They won't let you out, which was not true. And in 5 days, we had to release 5 prisoners with extreme emotional reactions. This is an experiment where everybody knows it's an experiment. The guards know the prisoners hadn't done anything. By a flip of the coin, they could be wearing the dresses rather than the military uniforms. So we had to end the study that was supposed to go for 2 weeks after only 6 days, because literally it was out of control. We have a wonderful website I'd love you to visit, just called prisonexp.org, or Prison Experiment. It has 70 slides and video clips and everything I've written about the study, plus everything about corrections. There's dozens and dozens of websites about correction. There's also discussion questions, provocative discussion questions. So what are the social processes that grease the slippery slope of evil? The first is mindlessly taking the first step. Remember, all evil begins with 15 volts. That when you press that first button, it doesn't seem like anything. But you know in your mind that 450 is down at the end. And why would 450 be down at the end if somebody was not going to get there? So before you press that first button, you look at the whole array and say, no, I know this is not a big deal, but I'm not going to take the first step. And the first step is, somebody says, look, the numbers don't add up. It's Friday, we want to go home. Just make it add up. It'll be okay. Nobody cares. It's always that first little step. Secondly, dehumanization of others. I'm going to talk more about this. The most basic process in all of genocide and mass murder is thinking about other people as less than human. Our guards began to think that their prisoners stunk, that they were like cattle. The other thing is de-individuation of self. Anything that makes you feel anonymous, that nobody knows who you are, means you stop being accountable. And so in many situations, people want to be anonymous. Whereas most times we want to be individuated. We want to stand out. We want to say, hey, look who I am. Diffusion of personal responsibility. One of the things about a group is, the group says, you won't be responsible, we're all responsible. It's shared. Nobody even has to say that. If we're in a group, we're all doing the bad thing, then the responsibility seems to be shared. Blind obedience to authority, the Milgram study is a powerful instance of that. Uncritical conformity to group norms. We want to be liked. Groups have a powerful effect on us because we need to be liked, we need to be accepted. And all of you know the kinds of things you or your friends did from middle school on just to get the group to like you, get the group not to reject you. And at that point, groups can have a powerful sway on us, getting us to do things which are immoral, illegal, or worse. Passive tolerance of evil. In the Stanford prison study, not every guard did bad things, but no good guard ever intervened with a bad guard. No good guard ever came a moment late, left a moment early. None of them ever came to see me and say, hey, they're doing these terrible things, you should stop it. And they never intervene against one of the bad guards. So it's the good guards in life who really maintain the system. Because the prisoners don't want to rebel, because they said it could get worse. We could lose the good guards, we could lose the good guards. And last, accepting an ideology that justifies evil. All ideologies start off being good. That is, they are good ends. But then they say, therefore we need any means to those ends. And once you buy into the ideology, the big picture, the glorious picture, then you get seduced in saying, well, therefore we have to cheat and we have to lie. In business, the ideology is we want to make a profit for our stockholders. That's why we're in business. And therefore it is okay to cook the books as Enron did and WorldCom and Tyco, etc. So these are 7 of the processes that grease that slippery slope of evil. Dostoevsky, famous Russian writer, says, nothing is easier than to denounce the evildoer. There he is, there she is. Nothing is more difficult than understanding him. Understanding is not excusing. Psychology is not excusiology. Psychologists get blamed because we're trying to say, let's understand the situation. And other people say, no, let's just find the evil person, put him in jail, punish him. We're saying, no, that never makes a difference if the problem is the situation. Because you could put every individual in jail, and if it's a situation, when you put new people in that bad situation, it's going to be repeated all over. So social psychological research, I've only presented a little bit. In my book, I have 2 whole chapters on all the classic research, and those of you taking psychology, even leadership courses, are going to get more of this. It reveals how ordinary, even good people can be transformed into evildoers without special drugs, only social forces, sometimes in some situations. So essentially what I've tried to show so far is we can take the drug out of his hand, and you still get good people to behave like Mr. Hyde. So what are the real-world parallels of the Stanford prison study? Again, it's kids playing cops and robbers. How could that relate to anything in the real world? Well, compare this picture. So here's our guards with prisoners with bags over their heads, the legs chained. They're going to go to a parole board hearing. We try to make the study very realistic. Not only a police arrest, we had prison chaplain come down, public defender. We had visiting hours with parents and boyfriends, girlfriends. We had parole board hearing, actually run by an ex-convict. Compare this picture with this one, same bags. This is now in Iraq. They stopped using paper bags, use sandbags. This is in Guantanamo Bay. You put the bags over the head to confuse them, because once you have a bag over your head, you don't know what the reality is. So you don't know a dog is muzzled or not. You don't know if somebody's going to hit you if they're yelling in your face. It just increases the sense of anxiety and terror. You saw it in the study of our guards getting prisoners to simulate fellatio. It's not the only place. The British got them to simulate sodomy. There's a picture from Basra. In the Stanford prison study at the end of 5 days, my guards had the prisoners line up, say, your female camels bend over, your male camels stand behind them and hump them. They thought it was funny because hump is a play on words. It means the camels hump, it also means intercourse. And the prisoners were doing it. They were simulating sodomy in 5 days. College students, bright, intelligent college students, we picked because they were normal and healthy. And so I'm saying, so here now, 40 years later, American soldiers are doing it, British soldiers are doing it. It's part of what happens when you have unlimited power and you're bored and there's no limits, there's no surveillance, there's no top-down. The worst things happened in the Stanford prison study at night because I went to sleep. The study was only me, and at the end, me, one graduate student, one undergraduate, and we're going 24/7. So there are times they knew I was asleep. I slept in an office upstairs, and that's when the worst things happened. The abuses in Abu Ghraib only happened on night shift, never on the day shift. So it's the same dynamic. Oh, I'm sorry. Now, obviously, I want to see parallels between my little old study and Abu Ghraib. But I want you to read this report, and I'll read it for you in case you can't see in the back. Most of the reports were done by generals. There were a dozen. One of them was headed by James Schlesinger, former Secretary of Defense, and he had some generals on his committee. And he says, the potential for abusive treatment of detainees during the global war on terrorism was entirely predictable based on a fundamental understanding of what? Of the principles of social psychology, coupled with an awareness of numerous known environmental risk factors. Findings from the field of social psychology suggest that the conditions of war, the dynamics of detainee operations carry an inherent risk for human mistreatment. It's the nature of that situation. You know bad things are going to happen. And therefore what? It must be approached with great caution, careful planning and training. There was none. No training, no planning, no caution. He goes on to, the report goes on to say, psychologists have attempted to understand how and why individuals and groups who usually act humanely, people are usually good, these are rare events, can sometimes act otherwise in certain circumstances. That's that cartoon that I just showed you. And that's the Lucifer effect. He says the landmark Stanford study provides a cautionary tale for all military detention operations. That was 35 years ago. Did they not learn anything, or did they learn that if you give soldiers permission to abuse their power and you have no oversight, you will get, in fact, what they got? And so some people say it was intentional lack of oversight, not simply absence of leadership. General Fay and General Jones also did a report where they point out that it was the environment created at Abu Ghraib, these are quotes, by leadership failures. Failure of military intelligence, CIA, military police that contribute to the occurrence of such abuse. And the fact that it remained undiscovered by higher authorities for a long period of time. 3 months. Who was watching the store? How could those things be going on? These happened over a 3-month period. How could that be happening? How could nobody know, or did they know and not care? And so we want that's a question we still have to ask. General Miller, who was in charge of Guantanamo, comes to General Sanchez at Abu Ghraib, and according to General Karpinski he said, they are like dogs, meaning the prisoners. If you allow them to believe at any point they are more than a dog, you've lost control of them. So when the general is saying, that's dehumanization in the raw, okay? So let's go back quick. Here's my Chip Frederick. I think he's one of the most